Okay, so I have to redo this. So I'm just gonna kick it off from the go. When I press play, I am able to pick up one weapon at a time. Every single time I pick up a new weapon, it will drop the other weapon, which is good. When this happens, it is set in our set weapon in our BP combat. It checks to see if we have a weapon. If we have a weapon, it gets that class and spawns the new one in front of it and destroys the old one and sets the new weapon. I want it to be able to hold multiple weapons and then set the main weapon that gets set to the equipped socket, so I will have to figure out how to do that eventually. Right now this is working fine. The way this works too is that our BP base weapon has a function that equips an item, and when this item is equipped, depending on what socket we have, we change that weapon to whatever socket it needs to be. So basically, if I pick up this weapon right now, it's not equipped, right? It's on my back, it's not equipped. Now it's equipped, unequipped, so it goes to the unequipped socket. So if I pick this one up, it will go to the equipped socket as well. That's what this does here in the base weapon. And the way that works for the logic that runs the toggle combat is basically every time I start this action, it will validate that we have a main weapon. If we have a main weapon, it will be valid, and it will also check a state. It will check if we are not in the general action state, which we won't be, because we are not in any state when we are just walking around, which will make this branch run to true. It will set our general action state, and if combat is enabled, it will unequip the weapon and put it into our unequipped socket while playing this montage. The way it plays the unequip is in an animation structure that we have here. We set it up by creating a enum montage. So this is an enumerator for just equip and unequip, just these two strings, right? These two names. Then we set up a structure. In this structure, we just have the variable for our enum montage, which is this asset that we created, and we'll run it here. And then we also created another structure of just a anim montage array. Then we create a data table. In this data table, we get a row name, action, and animation, because it actually asks us to pick from a structure. So when we create a data table, we tell it this is the structure we want to go off, and it will go off of this, and it will give us these two things. If I add a new one here, see, it will be unequipped. I can change that, and I change the name. I would change the name of that if I needed to, and so on. But we don't need it, so I'm gonna remove it. So here's where I create in this data table the two. If it's like the action is to equip, it will equip, and play this. If it is to unequip, it will unequip and play this. The way it knows that is through an anim notify. In this anim notify, this is just in the animation to put the correct weapon into the correct socket. But the way it picks out this animation is actually in the blueprint here. Here's where I tell it get montage for action, and this is in our base weapon. In our base weapon, we created this get montage for action. This is in our base weapon. Get montage for action. This is this function, it grabs our enumerator, because when we created the function, we gave it two inputs, the enumerator and an index, which is just an integer, and then outputs a anim montage. The anim montage is picked through the data table. So if the action that we pick, which is here, unequip, when we call the function, we will call unequip, and it will know that here, and it will pick that in the row name of the data table. Here's the row, and then it will pick the correct montage in the data table from the row name, unequip. So once it does that, it will grab the correct index, it will grab the index, which we're not really doing anything with. They just get put here, and it plays the montage, because in this function it actually puts out a montage if it is valid. It also puts out it does grab an index, but there's only one index per in the data table, so index 0, so it doesn't matter. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how this whole thing works. So I think I got a good understanding of it. You know, the only other thing I could explain is that in the once the montage plays, it actually will set our combat to be enabled in our BP combat here, which also that boolean we're going to use to probably play other montages once we are in that section. Not quite there yet. Just pretty much that's all we're doing. It's just checking to see if combat is true through that anim notify. And then there's also an anim notify that checks it to false and returns that value to as well. It's right here. We have a clear state notify as well, because it clears the state every time, so that we're not in the general state action anymore every single time. Please unequip. Here's unequip, setting us to combat mode. That's what this unequipped. Then it gets equipped. Then this would be false, and nothing would happen. This is just created so that we can't spam equipping. This toggle called combat, it just checks for a general action state. And if we're not in that general action state, it will be true, and it will run, it will give us a general action run this code, whether true or false. Just makes it so we can't spam any of this. I believe that's it. Yeah, that is it. Setting, equipping, unequipping sword. I talked about that. Swapping weapons, picking up weapons. Yeah, that's all it is. There's nothing in the pickup item that matters because it's gonna, this is pretty much in this pickup item. It just is a placeholder for the equipment, which is a class of BP base equipable. BP base equipable, which is this, which runs all of these, and in here is where the picking of the animation is for equipping and unequipping a weapon, which we're going to update as well later depending on the weapon. So still a lot to do, and this just checks if we have a weapon already and puts it in the correct spot. Yeah, that's everything. All right.